Hi, this is Dave McCoy, and you are listening to the Undercurrent podcast by Emerald Water Anglers. Enjoy.
All right, here we go.
Are you ready for this?
Sort of. I don't know if my bladder and my back are, but...
Oh my God, tell me about it. So we are going to hit the road to the Wind River Range to meet with Matt Shilling of Indifly.
Yep.
Talk about the new project that they're doing with the tribes out there, potential fishing lodge and fishing operation that fits into what Indifly does. Being a carbon neutral company, we would really love to be driving an EV out there. At this point in time, it's just not feasible.
No, there's no charging points.
We couldn't connect the dots on charging points well enough to do this in a timely enough fashion to go out, do the interview, see it, and turn around and come back and be able to make it, unfortunately.
We're trying to do this in, 72 hours?
At most, from right now to coming back and getting out of the car.
Yeah.
I do feel better about the fact that this is a 2001 vehicle and that I haven't bought a new vehicle since 1991, 92. And this one has 240,000 miles on it. So
yeah, let's hope she makes it.
Exactly.
Just drive this puppy right into the ground.
Let's hope both of these dinosaurs make it out there.
Yeah.
It and me included.
All right.
So here we go.
Here we go.
All right, man.
Let's do this.
Do it.
Want a beer?
I'm good.
Really?
Yeah, I try my beer.
Okay, grab one. Here you go.
One of these?
Yep. Raspberry, beer, pink wine, raspberry, wine, tequila.
Don't drink the tequila, man. Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks for having me down.
No, thanks for coming out, man.
Yeah,
I know it's a long drive and short trip, so really appreciate it.
Like I've said a number of times, I feel obligated to do this because somehow I'm on your advisory board, and I feel like I should probably be way more involved. I want to be way more involved. Not should be. I want to be way more involved. So, yeah. So this is part of it. I needed to shake your hand in order to, make this happen.
Yeah. Well, it's always good to see you. So.
Yeah. You too. So Indifly.
Yeah. Just want me to jump in?
Well, I was gonna throw what I knew at you, which is next to nothing. But I guess I'd start with saying, I can't even remember. It had to have been through Costa that I heard about it. I know it was through Costa, and Pete Vandergriff and I had talked about it a fair bit, and I was intrigued. Not gonna lie, because there was and still really isn't anybody else doing anything like this, and I love it. I'm all in, just all into the middle of the table.
Yeah, well, appreciate that, and that means a ton. And that's the whole really impetus for the organization, because there was no one really doing what we thought was a void in what needed to happen. And so, that's really how this whole thing got started.
So I know we talked about this a little bit earlier with Art. I kind of want to be more specific. I want to do this because I think Indifly deserves this. It deserves a spotlight.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
And I want to have you, and we've got Hayden here from Costa as well. I want to hear you guys weigh in on. Now, first of all, sort of how it started, which, like I said, we covered earlier today, but I also want to hear what the vision for it is. And, of course, talk a little bit about where we are now and why we're all here together at the same time.
Yeah.
But that's, I want this to blow up for you, to what I want to have happen.
I appreciate that. I have no fear that won't happen, because Dave McCoy's doing a podcast. So people will listen.
Oof, watch out. 182 downloads. Just see what that does for you.
Hey, man, that's 182 downloads. Anybody else in there? Hopefully it's more than that.
I think it'll be more than that.
Yeah. Look, maybe we just start with what Indifly is, right?
Absolutely.
Indifly is a nonprofit organization that empowers indigenous communities to own and operate fly fishing ecotourism businesses. And those businesses provide sustainable livelihoods and create economic incentives for the protection of indigenous homelands, and also generate, if we do it right, community-wide economic benefits. True, right? One of the things that we really focus on is doing all these projects in a sustainable way. And that sustainability goes across multiple, what we call pillars, right? So we have an environmental pillar of sustainability, which is what most people would assume, conservation of resources. And we do that in a way in which doesn't negatively affect the community's ability to use the resources as they currently are. And in a lot of cases, that's feeding themselves, right? So we're very sensitive to that.
Sure.
The economic pillar focuses on, the business side. How can we create sustainable opportunities for people to be employed? How can we create sustainable opportunities for money to stay within a project and not leak out, and things like that? And then last but almost most important is cultural sustainability, right? How can we create opportunities to enhance the culture that's in a project, right? So, and when I say enhance, I mean not lost. Educating the people on the importance of that, and really that's not us educating, that's elders of wherever we're at educating the community on it. And, from a business side, that's a differentiator, right? People who go to cool places and catch fish, they also want to immerse in the culture. And so when you talk to
I do believe that they do.
yeah, I do too. And look, I think that's true.
I do too. I think it's fun how you sell it to somebody. Yeah.
Exactly. And if we do it the right way, it becomes an additive to the trip, right?
Sure.
And so, we want to ensure that culture is not lost in a project. And then we want to also ensure that culture is able to be passed on to generations and then, shared with the world.
Right.
And because it is unique.
So when we were talking with Art earlier today, you used a term that I really latched onto, which was you're there to serve the community that you're involved with in each project.
That's right.
Because I think when you there's certain vocabulary that gets used rather uniformly across business and across 501c3s and nonprofits, and I think there's a little ambiguity in there with it. And so, help empowering, I love the word empowering, but what does it really mean? Like, how much of the empowerment are you walking away with after you do it is what I'm a skeptic of that word now.
As you should be.
So when you said you're there to serve the community, that struck a chord with me because that's not something you're hearing everyone talk about.
Yeah, and I really look at that as our role, right? At the end of the day, these are community-owned businesses, right? And it may be a tribe, it may be a village, it may be, some whatever you want to call it. But Indifly takes no financial position in these. We're there to facilitate capital to stand up a lodge. We're there to help market the destination around the world. We're there to help train guides and all these other smaller scale entrepreneurial activities that can service a lodge. But at the end of the day, it's the community's business.
Sorry to interrupt you really quick. Is there, in that process, I just feel like certainly with, not to go into specific projects, but certainly with some projects, the actual business entity and establishing that in and of itself, are you consulting with them on that, helping them actually figure out how to set an actual business up and then do all the infrastructure that's required to support that as well?
Yeah, if necessary. If necessary, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and it's different everywhere, right? So you take a place like Rewa.
Can you explain where Rewa is?
Yes,
for those? No, it's good.
Rewa is a village of 294 people in the middle of what's called the North Rupununi region of Guyana, which is in the interior of Guyana. So it's in the Amazon basin.
Okay.
And it's, a community full of people who made a really hard decision to not exploit their resources when they could have. You have amazing resources and obviously timber, right? You're in the Amazon basin, but you also have bauxite and gold, and you have, rampant poaching for the pet trade. I always like in Rewa, when I go there, it's kind of like being in the middle of a Disney movie. There's macaws flying everywhere, and there's, big cats, and, it's truly a majestic place. And, Rewa had those opportunities to do all those things. And they said, look, we want to conserve our resources. And, like many places in the world, they had shifted from an economic or a cash-based economy, barter economy. Thank you. They've shifted from a barter economy to needing to make money, right? And that's a hard decision to make when you have foreign mining companies coming in and offering cash, or a lot of times it wasn't cash. It was tangible items.
Right. Almost back to barter, if you would.
Yeah, I naively expected loincloths and spears the first time I went to Rewa, and what I got was Ed Hardy t-shirts, right? Yep. And it's, foreign mining companies coming around during the dry season in big trucks and just dropping off bags of clothes, or, a new motorbike for, the two show, which would be the chief's, family or something like that, right? Yep. And, that happens in other villages, and Rewa is, not really wanted any part of that, but they needed a way to make money, and so long story short, we helped them figure that out. But back to your question, if you take a place like Rewa, there really is no legal business infrastructure that needs to be set up there. What's unique is the targeted species is there, a paimon, and so which is actually a protected species, and so there were certain regulations that we need to make sure that we were operating within. But there wasn't, like, let's set up, an LLC or anything like that. They had actually already done that. So they had a little lodge that Conservation International came in and helped them build. Unfortunately, just no one came, right? And so, we helped them market it. There are challenges there, and, I'm getting into the weeds, and feel free to stop me. But, there are challenges with their bank is in a place that takes them 2 days to get to. They don't really have constant communication with the bank. There was, a $5,000 limit into monies they could receive into that account. And, when you're talking about $7,600 a week, per angler, you
hit 5K pretty fast.
In the beginning, I spent a lot of time at our bank just sending wires. I got to know our bankers very well. And now that's kind of all been worked out. And, Rewa's really a shining example of a project in which, they're standing on their own, right? Sure. And that's the Indifly model.
I was just going to say, so to interrupt you.
Yeah, of course.
Since you invited me to.
You're the host, man. You can do whatever you want.
Let's keep that within reason. But so since we're talking about Rewa, let's step a little bit back in time again and talk a little bit about that was the first operation, and it was in conjunction with Costa, or it was a Costa project, right?
Yeah, so the story there is Costa had someone that was affiliated with the brand that was a guide, but doing a birding trip in South America, and they stayed at Rewa. And he was just, awestruck by the decision that they made to not exploit their resources. And he, came back to Costa and was telling the story. And really, the brand Costa took the initiative to say, hey, let's figure out a way we can help this community. And, they put together a small team, and I was fortunate enough to be part of that team and kind of went down and figured it out. But without Costa's leadership, Rewa would be a much different place. And then, you kind of fast forward, and we had a model there that we thought could be replicated around the world.
Right.
And, it created this roadmap, so to speak. And, while the world doesn't need another nonprofit, and I think I said this earlier, there was also, as you alluded to, no one kind of doing what that was or what we do. And so we stood up an organization for a couple of reasons. One, what I just mentioned, but two, this thing is larger than what any brand should take on, right? And so we didn't want to put all the weight on Costa, and we have Hayden here from Costa, and he can jump in, but we didn't want to put all the weight on Costa either, right? And luckily, we've been able to develop great partnerships with other brands, Yeti and others, who have really come to the table and said, look, we want to support what you guys do. And to be honest, that's what it's all about, right? Like, I mean, we're a nonprofit. We can't do any of this. We can't fulfill our mission or have an impact in these communities without the strong partnerships that we have.
Sure. So on a couple of notes there. One is, the brilliance behind Costa's decision to jump in and do this as a brand. Mm-hmm. You just don't see other brands doing this without there being some monetization behind it back to them for the effort, both time-wise, monetarily, whatever. So, endless kudos to Costa for that. My God. The intriguing part for me on that is, in our sport, there's such a struggle at the top of the brand ladder for, that badge of honor for doing something really unique. And one of the things I really love about Indifly is that this is 100% about the community that you're stepping into. You're just the catalyst for it, more or less.
That's one of my favorite terms, catalyst, right?
Yeah.
And what we're really trying to do is create a spark. Right. And once you have that spark, the communities get 100% behind it in most cases. And,
well, you vet it, right? Like, this doesn't just happen overnight, which we've been talking about. We'll talk about again.
About 100,000 feet here. But yes, there's a lot that goes into,
you have to realize that spark has tenders around it to light once it.
Project viability, is a big deal. Yeah. But, the whole idea here is to have these communities, again, back to the service thing. If the community all of a sudden says one day, like, hey, we don't want to do this, that's their decision.
That's their business.
And yes, is it a hard thing for us to hear because we have made some financial investment and some time investment and other things. But at the end of the day, we serve at their pleasure, right? And that's what it's all about. And it's their operation. And, their success is our success. And if that's not something they're interested in, we're not going to fulfill our mission. So, it's,
right. You overstep your bounds as soon as you start trying to manage what they actually want to do with that.
Exactly. And luckily, knock on wood, we haven't ran into that problem.
That's great.
But, you always got to be prepared for it.
Of course. So the thing that I'm intrigued by is the idea that what's trying to take place here is so unique. I would just imagine brands would be tripping over themselves to try to be a part of this. And I feel like I'm fairly up to date on what's happening around the sport. And maybe I'm not privy to everything. I know I'm not privy to everything, but I guess what I don't see is somebody coming in as an equal, or maybe even more than somebody coming in as an equal to Costa to try to really sort of move the needle on this. I'm a little frustrated by that.
Yeah, no, look, just candidly, we were born out of a Costa project, and, it was in large part Costa's leadership and their vision to do something like this. Mm-hmm. And we're extremely grateful for that. But there have been brands who have come in on parity.
Good.
It's great. The flip side of that, and this is a failure of mine personally, is that, we haven't done a good job of, telling everyone about Indifly and getting everyone together, right? And look, there's a couple of reasons for that, right? One, strategically, we really wanted to build a foundation of an organization that has a model before we go out and raise a bunch of money.
Sure, that
right?
makes total sense.
And look, we talk about creating generational change in projects, or I was going to say on the reservation because that's where we are.
Mm-hmm.
But we talk about creating these generational changes. Well, look, I want Indifly to be around a lot longer than I am, or a lot longer than anyone in this room is.
Sure.
And the only way to do that is to build a great foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And that foundation is organizational, it's projects, it's all these things. So, now we're at this almost tipping point, if you will, of the organization where, we're ready to tell the world what we do. And some people will argue that we should have done that a lot earlier. And I'm willing to take all that on my shoulders, but I really wanted to have the model proven and to have donors be able to say, look, I am secure in making an investment in this project or this organization because it's proven, right?
Right.
And
I think there's some social responsibility in that, to be completely honest with you. And maybe, I think I'd go beyond maybe. I think that shows thoughtfulness, consideration, some degree, a high level of business savviness to be able to not want to put the cart ahead of the horse and step beyond what you knew you were capable of doing and allow it to form, allow it to, sort of bake, if you will, until you had a track record that was, more compelling when you did go to people for help. I applaud you for it.
Yeah, and look, thank you. That's very kind of you. One of the things that's unique about Indifly is, we were born in the fly fishing community, and that will always be our core, if you will. And we use fly fishing as a tool to, fulfill our mission and to help these communities. But part of the thing that I think we really miss out on in telling our story is the human impact of what we do, right? And fly fishing as a sport is responsible for that,
mm-hmm.
right? I mean, that is something that this sport and industry should be very proud of, is the human impact of what we're able to do. And that's, everything from, job creation to improved healthcare to clean water systems to power for the first time in people's lives to, the list can go on and on. But, at the same time, when I take a step back and look at 100,000 feet and you look at fly fishing and its power, it's limited in some sense, right? But if we can speak to the human element of what we do and I say, hey, by the way, a bunch of fly anglers are responsible for this, it's a win for everyone.
It's funny you start to go down that path because, I think something that's really started to be more prevalent in my life is, this will be as deep into politics as I go, but I would just say that what is underestimated is how and where you spend your money. And if you have these opportunities to travel and fish and immerse yourself in unique experiences in one-of-a-kind cultural fly fishing or outdoor experiences versus going to a place that is, this will come off really well, owned by people that look like you and I, that are more my age maybe, that come from a hedge fund or, a bunch of private equity or a singular private equity person. And the idea is just to provide a Wall Street Journal type of experience for their consumers, for their customers, their guests, their clients, versus spending your money in a place where every dollar is staying within the community of the place that you're spending it. and benefiting the people, just as you were mentioning. That's powerful.
Yeah, look, certainly different models.
Of course.
There's a market for both.
Of course there is.
I mean, we're naive not to...
No, of course there is. That's not going to this isn't going to match everybody's interest.
Right, exactly, right? And,
but there's a lot of people that I don't think either have been presented with that option very well either.
Yeah.
There's people kind of doing this out there, like not naming organizations or anything, but there's people that are out there. They're on the cusp of, they're hiring locals, and, locals are involved in the day in and day out operations, but by and large, it's still owned by somebody who's, rewarding themselves for the effort to have the lodging.
Yeah, and look, there are a lot of good businesses.
Of course there are. Yeah, it's not to say it's a bad one at all.
And the difference there, I guess, would be, and this is going to sound negative when I don't want it to sound negative, is that when that business chooses to move on to a new location or, switches gears and all of a sudden the business goes away, mm-hmm. The impact is the impact to the community is much larger than the impact on anyone else.
Or if a disaster rolls in and flattens a place and the person just decides not to rebuild.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there are a lot of reasons for that outside.
Yeah, no, I'm just pointing out an example.
Yeah.
I like to poke the bear sometimes.
Well, yeah.
Sorry.
This bear isn't going to attack you.
No, I'm poking you. You're not the bear I'm poking, no.
Yeah, I know. But look, there are also, in those cases, business decisions that need to be made and decisions that are sometimes out of people's control when you're talking about, is the infrastructure there or all those other things there, right?
Yeah. So this is so in the weeds, it's not even funny.
I see what you did there, Dave.
Yeah. I'm cutting myself off on this one. Hayden, how are you, buddy?
Great.
Let's jump to Costa for a second.
Yeah.
Costa's had some fairly significant changes here in the last 18 months or so.
That we have.
Yeah. How have those changes changed, or have they changed Costa's mission and sort of the spirit of this? Or better yet, if possible, are there things that Costa is getting involved in, unbeknownst to pretty much anybody and everybody, that are going to come to light at some point, that are going to be unreal for the consumer, the public, and the people involved?
I don't think there's anything groundbreaking like that going on right now, but you referenced the massive changes we've gone through as of recent. I mean, a massive merger with a major corporation.
Mm-hmm.
And you referenced earlier that Costa has been a front runner and a leader in conservation and doing the right thing
mm-hmm.
for a long time. And it's really neat to see after this, these other brands in the portfolio seeing what we've done and paved the way and wanting a piece of it. And we're educating the other brands.
That's rad.
How to do this. It's really neat. We've built a entire book, our Costa Protect Report from the last year, and it outlines all of our cause partners, everything we do, why we do it, how we do it. And now it's published and it's going to our retailers, it's going to people in the business.
Sweet.
We were just came off Vicast and it was a hit. Everyone loves to see in print the impact that we're making. So it's just one of those things to see that, sure, it's a big corporation and it's scary, but you can still make an impact on them. They want to do the right thing too. And they have a lot bigger reach than you do.
Is Costa still going to be the intimate fishing brand that they've been known for and have sort of gained the recognition for?
Yeah, are
they giving you the leeway?
In a portfolio of glasses, we are the fishing brand,
right? And
with all this capital, it's only going to get bigger.
Cool. I'm excited to see what you guys do.
Yeah, a lot more global reach.
Cool. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
bringing Costa and Indifly back together, you're still partnered.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that doesn't seem to be changing for the foreseeable future. I would hope.
We certainly hope not.
Yeah.
I will say, just on a personal level, I'm really proud of Hayden. He.
Well, there's a connection there too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that should be mentioned for sure in this.
Hayden was an Indifly intern, actually the first Indifly intern, and did a great job, which led to a role with Costa. And I'm really happy to see Hayden thrive. I really think that that's what life is all about, right? Helping people get to where they want to be.
For sure.
And so I'm proud that Hayden is making a difference at Costa.
Were there things that you kind of gleaned from your internship with Indifly that helped you?
Yeah, Matt's horrible.
That is far from the
That has got to be far from the truth.
Yeah.
You're a good person, so it appears.
What'd you tell me earlier?
Touche.
I mean, one thing my internship did teach me is that Matt is very critical when it comes to copy. For a while, I was like writing all the social posts, and
Yeah.
I mean, if you run the nonprofit, you want the voice to be heard in the right light, and
Has to be.
yes, exactly.
There's not a lot of fudge room there.
So I learned a lot on critiquing and rewriting and making sure the brand voice, or in this case, the nonprofit's voice, is heard in the way that it should be.
That's cool. Did you come away from the internship with Indifly with an idea of how to impact what Costa is going to do, or going to be doing with your role at Costa? Like, did it change you at all?
I mean, it changed the way I talk about things, definitely. I mean,
Cool.
when I was interning with Indifly, I got to contract with Coast a little bit and do some face-to-face events,
Mhm.
and just seeing the way people love the brand, you can encourage them to, like, you are spending your dollars in the right place, not
Right.
only for the product, but for these reasons here, and people really like to hear that. You need to make sure you.
For sure. I'd like to know your money goes to more than just your glasses, like, or your whatever
Says a lot.
product. It does. It does.
To be fair, I'm a horrible writer, but a great editor.
How does that happen?
No, I'm not a great anything. But
Come on. You're good at choosing tequila.
One of the things that I think is often lost as we talk about Indifly and, not to move away from Costa, but, I don't think people understand the impact that indigenous communities have around the world on resources.
Explain.
So, indigenous communities are obviously spread out throughout the world, and there are many names for those things, tribes, villages, whatever. And there are many different groups around the world that identify as indigenous. But if you group them all together, they're custodians of 80% of the world's remaining biodiversity.
That's staggering.
Staggering, right? I mean, these are the people who protect the last remaining pristine places in the world.
Chew on that for just a minute.
Right? I mean, so
Yeah.
everyone should be doing everything that they can to enable these communities to better protect their resources. Because at the end of the day, one planet, right? So, I think oftentimes that's lost on people. They say, look, with all the global issues going on around the world, and there is certainly no shortage of them, why should we care about indigenous communities? And, within our little space of Indifly and what we do,
Mhm.
that is the reason, right? I mean, that's it.
I don't know that it gets lost. I just don't know that people have ever been told that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure, I know some have, but it's a pretty staggering figure. And that should shock a few people. Like, just take yourself out away from the little bubble that you live in your city or wherever it is, and just think about that for just a moment. and realize that, yeah, your city is immense and has density, population and tons of, tall buildings and stuff, but the natural resources that are consumed and that 80% of what remains is held by the indigenous species or the indigenous people is crazy.
Yeah.
I actually love hearing that number. That's all the more reason to support this.
Yeah, and back to fly fishing as a tool thing, another question I get asked a lot is, look, I know Dave, Hayden, Matt love fly fishing, but
I think Andrew does too.
Andrew, yeah.
Is he awake over there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other Matt. But, does it really, why is that a vehicle, right?
Yeah, it's a good question.
It really is. And look, it's a vehicle for a few reasons. One, it's familiar, right? In almost every project, there's a history of fishing, whether that's for sustenance, right, to feed their family, or to, do it as a recreational activity in some cases. We just teach them how to do it in a different way. And there are, very funny stories about how that goes, right? I mean, we go into a community and say, look, we're going to catch fish in the most inefficient way possible. Keep them in the water, take a photo with them, do some science, let them go. So you or other people can catch them again. Right. And by the way, people are going to pay a lot of money to do it. And rightfully so. It's like, yeah, good joke. Right.
Right. What are you guys really going to do?
Yeah. Right. And then, just the whole concept of fly fishing is also lost globally in most communities. Right. At the project in Anna, I can't tell you how many conversations I had, which was unfortunately through an interpreter because I should have learned another language. So you're going to put a fly on the end of a fishing rod and a fish is going to eat it? Like a literal insect?
Right, fly. Literal.
That's kind of the thing, right?
Right.
It's also sustainable, right? And that's something that we're obviously focused on, and we touched on a little bit. But everything Indifly does is rooted in science. And so before we go into any project, we want to understand what impact bringing other people to a place has, right? If that's a fishery that puts food on the table for families, we want to make sure that we don't have a negative impact on that.
Right.
If that's a fishery that, is important for an ecological reason, we want to make sure we don't have an impact on that. So, we have a strong science team that, is full of young, hungry people who have been able to go to these projects and really make an impact. But at the end of the day, like, if it's not sustainable, it's not worth doing a project. And we should talk about the Am project, and that's a really cool story that, went in a different direction than anyone anticipated. But, back to sticking with this theme, it's also lucrative, right? Mm-hmm. One of the reasons why we use fly fishing as a tool is obviously that we love it. Another is that, fly anglers spend a lot of money and are willing to spend a lot of money.
Yeah.
To go to a place that is unique and they can immerse in the culture and, catch fish that are rarely caught on the fly. It's all of those things that add up to why we use this as a tool.
So a couple of things you mentioned in there. One is, the science that goes into determining whether or not the impact is going to be viable enough to move forward with a project. Using, let's come to the reservation that we're on, mm-hmm. the Wind River Reservation here in Wyoming. And in order to come to that, what different degrees of science did you have to take into consideration to evaluate that to a place that you were comfortable moving forward with?
Yeah. To be honest, Wind River was the easiest one out of them all.
And why? Because of the location?
I'm going to extrapolate. There's a couple of reasons for that. One, because you have 2.3 million acres here. Within that acreage are 256 lakes and 2,000 plus miles of streams in one of the places that not many people go. And you go 2.5, 3 hours down the road and you're fishing on a trout stream with 50 people on each side of you, right? And so you have an ecosystem here that is unique and robust, but doesn't have any pressure, right? And so, automatically you can say, all right, so this is probably sustainable, but we want to go further than that. And the other part of what's, quote unquote easy, and nothing is easy in any project, but you have two amazing U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service biologists that serve the reservation as part of a trust with the federal government that, go and sample the lakes and rivers and streams that, have the scientific data to prove that, right? Typically in a project around the world, that infrastructure doesn't exist. You don't have the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, right? And so we would send a scientist down to, in some cases, live for years before we would make a decision to apply pressure to a fishery. Here, we're lucky enough to have the biologists, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service biologists, tell us that, hey, this place can sustain some pressure.
That's awesome. So this being easiest, which was most difficult?
Well, I don't want to say this is easy because it's not.
Your words.
No project is easy. They're just different challenges.
Sure.
And each one has their own unique flavor, right? So, you take REWA, right? There's logistical challenges. There's, communication challenges.
Sure.
There's financial challenges. All of those things. In large part, all those things have been worked out, and I couldn't be more proud of REWA. At the end of COVID, wasn't during COVID. They ran their first trip, soup to nuts, not to use that term, but A to Z, so to speak, where they made initial contact with a client, ran them through the experience, and got them safely out of the country. And a guy sent me an email and said, look, I've traveled all over the world and hired guides in every place that you can mention, and this makes the top of the list. And it's not necessarily, I went to a cool place. It's the community involvement. It's the communication. It's the, in the beginning, they had a shortwave radio that communicated the next village. And then if they needed medical care, right, it was a telephone game, right? I mean, they communicated to somebody who could eventually send somebody to help. And now they have satellite internet, and, Rovin, who has become a rock star in his own right, talks to these clients and is able to, my point is they're able to do trips on their own now.
The boats left the dock is what you're trying to say.
Well, and for us, it's like,
which is pretty amazing.
Eventually, we, if we're successful, we pull out of a project 100%, right? And it's 100% their deal. And if they need help, we'll always be there. But, that's their thing. And REWA's really been the first project to do that. And it's just this amazing arc.
That's
right?
pretty awesome.
And if you would have asked me 5 years ago if that was possible, I would have probably said, I hope so. And now it is. And it's just really cool to see.
So how do other projects, when you begin to approach them, now that you have REWA sitting there as a beacon of exactly what the whole idea behind Indifly is, how do they respond to that? Does that come off as hope, or do you even mention it? Or
some people will ask questions, and they'll go on our website and see different projects.
Is it intangible?
But there's not a lot of relatability there.
Sure,
right?
that's what I mean.
Yeah, and so oftentimes it's just, all right, we know you have a model that could work. Let's try it out.
Right.
And again, when you go into a new project, everyone is so different. And, I'm going to switch gears here, but something that we're really excited about is, we've created the social impact fund now that has a different side to what we do. So, these projects like Wind River Indian Reservation or any of the other projects, they're a decade plus long project, right? From beginning to end. It's a long play and it's very expensive, and it's the
decade long.
Right thing to do. I throw out that term because it's easy, but like you take here for example, we spent 4 years on the reservation building trust with people before we ever talked about doing a project. And the reason why we did so is because obviously there's, as you touched on earlier, skepticism that is it should be skeptical, right? And here, just the uniqueness of the reservation system in the United States, it's elevated a bit.
Yep.
Again, rightfully so.
Mm-hmm.
But we're talking about making long-term change. And so in order for us to make long-term change, we're willing to put the work in on the beginning with no return, right? And so if we have to spend 4 years building trust within the community before we talk about doing a project, that's what we'll do. And so, it's some of that is building trust. Some of that is getting the business side to a place where it can stand alone. Some of that is developing a market. There's all these things that go into it. Point being, those are long-term plays that are expensive. But we just did a project in Africa, Lesotho, with African Waters, who Rob and Keith, great guys, who have a community that they've been in partnership with a long time and have a true impact on that community, right? And they had a need that was identified, which was a basic human need, power, right? Electricity, that they've never had before in their life. And, Rob and Keith came and said, hey, why don't we do something here? And luckily we were in a position to say, all right, yeah, let's do this. And we did a solar installation in Lesotho in the community. And, it was, it provides families with electricity for the first time in their lives. And that is a quick impact, and it's a quick, solving a need that is basic, right? It's not easy, but it's easier. And when you compare that to a long-term play of traditional Indifly model, it's a lot less expensive.
So I think that's a great point. We've been building up to the idea that the Indifly model is this: you come in and you are here from A to Z. And if it takes however many years to complete that, it's fine. You get that going in, but there is that possibility for an existing operation to be there and just need a quick insertion. So Indifly can do that too. Because Rob and Keith kind of had this thing going there and had already made some incredible leaps and bounds for that community.
Absolutely.
If you ever get to see that place, if you didn't go, it's amazing.
One of the most powerful statements I've ever heard of any project anywhere, any across the board, any nonprofit, is when we wrapped up this project, one of the leaders in the community said, if Mr. Rob was a member of our community, we'd elect him, chief or whatever they called it. I'm going to blank on the name, because he delivers on what he says. Yeah. And that is that organization, right? And my point is, Indifly wants to partner with those organizations. If you are making an impact in the community, and we'll ask you to prove it.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah, transparency is key here.
Exactly. But if you can do that, if we can be helpful, that is our mission, right? Our mission is to help communities. So, if you're doing good in communities, we're all in, but we want you to prove it.
Right. No, I loved that. I loved hearing that you'd gotten involved with Rob and Keith and the Lesotho project.
Yeah. It was a really cool project. And look, I'm going to give a shout out to Johan. Without Johan, none of this would have happened. So, just to bring people up to speed. So, Johan is now our project coordinator in Guyana, but before worked for African Waters and is a man of many talents. And without him, I mean, we wouldn't have had this opportunity to impact the community. So,
yeah, Johan's kind of a stud.
He is.
Yeah. What else was I going to ask you about?
We go back to the science and
I was going to say,
and what went into that project and the sustainability side of it.
Yeah. So
how much were you involved with that through? Were you interning there when that was taking place, or were you already at Costa?
Yeah, I was with him a little bit.
You were with him there, okay? Because then Andy Danielchuk, I think, was helping with the science down there, correct?
That's right. Yeah. So, what's interesting about Anna is that you have a couple things. So
Anna is,
So.
French Polynesia.
We looked for different projects. We went to French Polynesia to look at one atoll, which was an amazing place, but zero community. Literally, no one lives there. One guy, which would be, a native of that place, right? And for us, that impact isn't very great, right? Amazing fishery. Amazing place, but for us to fulfill our mission, just to really fit the void. But we like the idea of French Polynesia. For those who don't know, think of Tahiti and Bora Bora, right? Yeah. It's French Polynesia. Yeah. But there's something like 118 islands and atolls, not all inhabited. But, when you look at terms of scalability, the theory is you make it work on one island or atoll and it works everywhere else, right? And then you can package destinations, right? So, you get a grouping of 3 islands or atolls that are close together, and you can create a unique experience for a visiting angler by hopping on a boat and going an hour to a next island and, having a cool experience. Right. So we like that idea. So we partnered with this group that had spent some time in French Polynesia.
Is that Matt?
Yep.
Matt, Fly Odyssey.
Yep, Fly Odyssey. And then now they've stood up their own foundation called the Island Initiative. Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that we did was we went on an exploratory trip like we do on all things. And now this is one of the things that I'm going to ask of you one day. We have a more formal process to do that. But, we went there and, we had this amazing experience and, the fishing was okay, but we thought it could be great. Mm-hmm. And I'll never forget this moment. We're sitting around in a driveway of this guy named Raphael, who's like now the head guide. And, somebody jokingly says, "So what's your favorite fish to eat?" And everyone that's local says bonefish. Right. And we never thought that would be the answer. And we're like, look, that's great. We didn't say this out loud, but in everyone's head was like, whoa, that's our kind of target species, right? So what's the impact there? And so we really wanted to figure that out. And so we met this amazing young scientist named Alex, mm-hmm. who studied under Andy and who had previously worked with Matt in Tetiaroa. Mm-hmm. And, he lived on that atoll for 3 years. And primarily his job was to go down to the dock every morning and catch fish and count fish and measure fish and do, collect data on what people brought into the dock for sure. And, look in Anna, eating bonefish is a very large part of their culture. And so we didn't want to have, going back to that, sustainability pillar,
right.
We didn't want to have a negative impact on that. Like if we were going to send people down to catch bonefish and that impacted negatively their ability to eat bonefish or send bonefish to family in Anna or in Tahiti from Anna, like that's not our game, right?
Well, that's an awkward one, right? Because you're talking about that very intimate moment between a guide and a client when you land a fish, and maybe it's the first one for somebody, and as an American or as a Western civilized person, a lot of times our thing is you get the photo, you let that thing go, but right. You just let dinner go. Wow. And how does that go over with your guide that doesn't speak great English but understands what that could have meant to his family? That's a super delicate situation to have to navigate.
Yeah, for sure. The interesting thing there is that they eat enough bonefish so that's not really an issue, right? So what happens there is Anna's a little bit unique in that ecosystem in that there's not a lot of tidal inflow to the
lagoon,
atoll.
right?
Yeah. So there's one place that the bonefish go out to spawn. And, everybody knows how bonefish spawn. They congregate and then go out to the ocean, spawn, and come back.
Yeah.
They set up traps at the one place that they spawn on the entire atoll.
And
right?
it's pretty easy to trap them there.
And, the fish swims right, it goes into the trap, and the fish swims left, and it goes, out to the ocean to spawn.
Right.
And, so unfortunately what was happening is that they were decimating the population.
Sure. There's not even that many people on the island. How many?
500 people.
500,
right?
right?
Down from 5,000.
And it's 13 kilometers from one side to the other.
It's pretty small. But you've been there, so I don't know if you went to the other side of the atoll. But there are villages that nobody lives in anymore, right?
There's a church
you go
there.
To a church on the other side of the atoll,
right?
And it's the coolest place that you will see. But nobody lives there.
It's unbelievable.
It really is.
1.5 feet above sea level.
Yeah.
It's the single greatest postcard, one of my favorite photos I ever took.
Yeah.
Ever.
And they keep it up, but point being, there were 4 or 5 villages around the atoll. And now, for a multitude of reasons, which I'm happy to go into actually. So now everyone's congregated in one village basically.
Right.
And so there's a couple reasons for that. One, the primary economic activity on the atoll is what's called copra. And the French government gives them a subsidy to go harvest coconuts, right? Their entire life revolves around coconuts. Harvest coconuts, they dry them out in the sun, and then they get put in a burlap bag. And then there's 2 concessionaires on the atoll. And then at that point, the harvestor gets a subsidy from the government for doing their work, right? There was a big typhoon that knocked down a bunch of coconut trees. Families can't sustain themselves on, going out to the sector, as they call it, and harvesting copra anymore. That coupled with the fact, and as an American, this is something that, is hard to comprehend. Every kid leaves that atoll at age 11 to go to school.
Yeah, that one hurt a lot.
I mean, you're a parent, I'm a parent, but it's, I can't imagine, and the government will pay for you to see your kid 2 times a year, right? And so it just
seems a little premature compared to how we raise our children. Yeah. So
right.
Yeah.
But so what happens within that education infrastructure is they go to what we would call elementary school on an island, and then they go to a different island for what we call middle school, and they end up in Papayete, which is the capital of Tahiti. And that's a real city with real tourism and real jobs, and they look at themselves and say, all right, I'm going to go back to Anna and pick coconuts for the rest of my life, or I'm going to get a job, right? And so what unfortunately happens is no one comes back.
Yeah.
And it just tears families apart, and it's heartbreaking to see. So, back to the conservation story. So Alex is there, and he's collecting data from people who bring fish in, which they're in that culture. It's, they call themselves the Parata, which are sharks. And you have to understand this is a culture that's very proud of their warrior history. This atoll had a cannibal army up until recent history, and would go conquer other islands and atolls and bring people back and sacrifice them, or you basically you join the cannibal army or you die. So Alex had a really tough job, is my point. You're messing with our most important thing in our lives, which are the fish.
And you stand out like a sore thumb down here.
And you're a white dude. Right? And I got to give it to Alex. I don't think there was anyone else who could
have pulled that off for that. Yeah.
And I'm going to tell a really cool story at the end here, so stick with me. So fast forward, we realized that there is a declining bonefish population on the atoll. So, we look at what's called spawning potential ratio. And that is in a healthy fishery, say 20%. They were plus or minus 9, right? And you had this unique...
over the 20%, they were plus or minus 9.
They were at 9%.
Oh, okay.
That at that level, right?
Okay.
So the fishery is going to collapse, right? And you had this unique thing of the young people really got it, and the old people, the older people of the atoll were like, there's been bonefish here my entire life. There's always going to be bonefish, right? And so, really, the one of the heroes of the story is the director of the school system who, at that point, Alex was going into the school every day and just teaching people about the lagoon and the science and all of that. And then he started showing the data to the director of the school and said, we need to do something about this. And so, we got the kids a drone, and they could fly the drone and see the aggregation. And, they could, they went to the the French government and said, we want to create a marine educational area, which is similar to our marine protected area system in the United States.
Right.
And we want to protect this area, which also happens to be the place where the bonefish go out to spawn.
Right.
And then they took it a step further and said, we want to enact a rehui. And a rehui is a Polynesian cultural, they call it a political move. It's really a regulation. It's a moratorium on harvest, right? And there are other rehuis on different islands and atolls around French Polynesia, but they hadn't had one there in, a century. And so what that requires is a referendum within the community. And you had these kids who went around on a bus to the community and knocked on doors and said, look, grandma, grandfather, and uncle, I want you to start making decisions for me and not necessarily for you. And these kids got a rehui passed. And so for
so incredible.
3 months out of the year, right, the spawning season, out of the year for 5 years, these bonefish are protected. And so you can't catch, capture, kill a bonefish, harvest a bonefish at their most vulnerable stage. And those kids, mind you, all these kids are under 11.
Right, because they're still on the island.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's just this, like if you would have asked someone within our organization where we thought leadership would come from in that project, it's not likely to be kids. And they are true heroes of conservation. I mean, it's amazing. And so now to fast forward, you're back at a 19% spawning potential ratio.
That's awesome.
Right? And so, back to the science, the importance of the science, like that's something that we can prove,
right.
9 to 19 is a big jump, but look, there's still, room for it to decline. Of
course.
So, we need to make sure that is still sustainable. But back to Alex, to round out that story. So the first rehui ceremony, we all go down and, they do this ceremony where they sacrifice bonefish, actually. But they put them in this mantle, and it's very formal. And, everybody was asked to bring a rock from where they're from and set it on the mantle. And then you go around and say, I'm Matt from XYZ. I'm, whoever from XYZ. And I'll never forget this moment. They got to Alex, and this is actually later in the evening when we're doing something else, but, they got to Alex, and Alex said, I'm Alex from, and like the whole community shouts Anna, right? And it's just this like amazing moment of like, wow, man, I backtracked to 3 years ago.
I kind of want to, it kind of brings a tear to my eye, actually. I can only imagine how that impacted Alex.
Definitely brought a tear to my eye.
Yeah, for sure.
And now, part of our fellowship program is we help you get your PhD, and Alex has become a doctor and is now like the South Pacific bonefish expert, right?
That's so rad.
And so, he's carved out a really good niche, but it's another person, we're really proud.
Yeah, it's so incredible. What an awesome story. Holy crap. And the director of the school, is it Dennis?
JP.
JP.
Yeah, Jean Pierre.
That's right. He's pretty exuberant. He's pretty excited about what he's doing at the school.
Yeah, and
he's pretty pumped about the kids.
He is,
which is awesome. Yeah. It's super cool to see somebody that shepherds that program and those kids, and the enthusiasm that he carries with it. But also to give him victory like this is
well, I'll be
incredible.
honest, it hasn't been easy for him, right?
No, of course not.
Like it's
that's an awkward position.
You take a community of 500 people, and smaller community, the more political, and
kids are one thing, but you're an adult.
Yeah, there's been lots of issues there, but JP has persevered, and he should be applauded for that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. He was really good. He came over a couple of times when we were there, and we got to go.
Yeah,
the kids took us through there.
He's a sleeper, JP will say he doesn't speak any English, and then you have a conversation with him for 15 minutes.
He speaks pretty good English, actually. Sorry to throw him under the bus there, but
back to the science thing. We've been blessed with a few really good science. Another one is Robert Lennox, who now works in Norway, but he's a guy.
What's going on? Is he doing anything?
No, he works for a lab in Norway.
Oh, okay.
He really took over the Guyana science program.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And it's funny. He's Canadian, and he goes down to Rewa and with like a tank top on, right? Everyone's like, "Dude, you're gonna get eaten alive, white guy."
Right.
But Robert was actually set on Alex's PhD dissertation committee, right, when he defended, and it's just this group of guys who are super passionate about what they do, and they all help each other, and we couldn't do what we do in the long run without them. So. We're really grateful to Alex and Robert and everyone else that's gone through the science program.
That's pretty awesome, man.
Yeah, and look, that's another way Indifly can have a small impact, right? Which is, if you want to help us fulfill our mission, we're a family, and we will help you fulfill your mission, and that's getting your PhD. That's great, right? So.
Kind of hard to follow that up.
Well, the Alex Anna thing is always hard to follow.
Well, yeah. I obviously know that there's been successes, and it's part of the reason that I'm really intrigued by your organization. And but I think one of the things that I'm really the question I want to ask would be the natural one, which would be what's next. And I think we've addressed it to some degree already. And the note that Matt wants to see is, why are we here?
Yeah.
And I think that what I want to do is give you the opportunity to obviously explain why we're here. I think you've covered a bunch of it, but let's talk maybe a little more in depth about this. But I know it's a little bit of a crystal ball question, but I'd really like to see in your brain for a minute, if you could corral everything of possibility to what Indifly would do, are there targets, or are there things that you're aware of or are interested in engaging in at the level that you have with these other places?
Well, my brain can be a scary place sometimes. Fair warning.
Cheers to that.
But one of the things that we looked at through COVID, and we're grateful to be a nonprofit that made it through the pandemic.
For sure.
Because it was challenging for many organizations, and we're certainly grateful to still be here. But one of the things that we really focused on is committing to the partners, and when I say partners, in this case, the communities that we've created relationships with. And, while there are infinite options to stand up new projects around the globe, we're really committed this year to fulfilling our commitment to the people that we're currently working with. And so we're here on the Wind River Indian Reservation, which is one of our priorities for this year. And, we're again at this tipping point where we've been here for, since 2014, really. And, there were a lot of things that we needed to do to get us to this place. Some of that is, operational internally as an organization. Some of that is, looking at the viability of a project and how we can fulfill the community-owned and operated, keyword operated part. And so, what we're really focused on now is let's take this place to the next level. And, it's one of these things that we struggle with a lot, especially domestically when you talk about projects, is, how do we keep this place pristine while also creating some opportunity for people? Here you have, and look, I'm very cognizant of never speaking about the tribes or for the tribes or whatever, but these are the facts. You have 70-80% unemployment on the reservation. People are going to find this place in the COVID era of getting outside and exploring new places. Let's do it right. And so, we're at a place now where we're looking at, all right, so what's the next step, as you alluded to? And the next step here would be to, help the community stand up a lodge in which they can keep dollars on the reservation. You're at a place where you have 2.3 million acres and very few places to spend money in. That's a hard thing when you're traveling here to wrap your brain around. Right. You have a community that is in need of economic activity and a driver. But outside of going to the casino and gambling or staying at a hotel or filling your car up at the gas station, there's really no place to have an economic impact. And here on the reservation, their largest asset today are their resources. And, if we can utilize those resources, again, in a sustainable way, and I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot, but if we can find a way to do that and keep dollars on the reservation, it's a game changer for the unemployment number, right? If we can decrease unemployment by 5 to 10 points over the course of, say, 5 years, that's a win here, right? That's a big number. And, at the same time, you also have the ability to increase enforcement. A large part of what, I hope makes it into the podcast is the challenges of protecting a pristine, unique place with, I don't even want to say very limited resources, whatever is above that, right? It's our.
I was thinking it was below very limited, because that gives a lot of,
or below, yeah, whatever the terminology. Point is, it's impossible.
I'd love to get them to very limited.
Yeah.
After hearing that today, that was unbelievable.
Yeah, and so it's one of those things that we're really focused on on this project. And when I say reservation, I mean this project. And, you know, so we're going to kick off a capital campaign in the fall, you know, that people can engage in and really start to raise some money for a few things, right? You know, one is the increase in conservation dollars on the reservation, right? So, you know, habitat is not really an issue here. You know, it truly is like a pristine place.
Right.
There isn't a need to go in and do a bunch of habitat projects. The need comes from the people coming into the reservation and obeying the regulations.
We're in the United States.
Yeah.
We're in the lower 48. Yeah.
Yeah. And so, you know, how can we help our increase enforcement? You know, at the same time, how can we stand up a lodge and start creating economic activities? And when I talk about economic activities, you know, we always focus on a lodge, but what the lodge is really a hub, right? And out of that hub, if we create the model successfully, are offshoots of smaller scale entrepreneurial activities that service the people that come here.
Absolutely.
And maybe stay at the lodge.
Yep.
And so, you know, it's not all about fly fishing, and it's not all about guiding. It's not all about hospitality. It's about, how do you feed the people that are here? How do you entertain the people that are here? How do you clean up after the people that are here?
How do you give them something to go home with after they're here?
Exactly. Arts and crafts, you know, and here it's pretty prevalent, you know, and so there are all those opportunities, but all those things translate to jobs, which go back to that decrease in that high unemployment number.
And those jobs, it's funny because when, you know, I don't want to spend a ton of time on this, but you talk about what it takes to live. I should have given you tequila earlier.
Got like a bug in there.
Really nice. You know, you talk about jobs, and I think one of the things when you talk about jobs and what most people that are probably going to listen to this would think, it's different here. Like the cost of living here isn't quite what it is in a lot of the places that you and I and everybody else in this room live. It's a very delicate subject, so I don't want to.
It doesn't take much to move the needle.
It doesn't, but I don't want to undercut the importance of moving that needle either. So, you know, if you had somebody buy a necklace every week, or two people buy a necklace every week, and that's enough to sustain somebody and maybe their family for a while.
Maybe, yeah. And or, you know what I would like to see stuff is supporters of Indifly buy projects regardless of going there, right?
Right,
and
of course.
That's how we expand on the impact.
Yep.
You know, so, you know, we can create a store, whether it lives on the Indifly website, which, you know, we need to figure out the film.
It's a whole other animal.
We talked about this earlier, inside joke there. You know, how can we create opportunities for people that want to support a place like the reservation or any other project, but don't necessarily go there? You know, and
that's hard. You can. That's hard.
It is hard, but you know, it's worth it.
Well, I think I totally agree with you. I think it's worth taking a step in the direction to provide the opportunity for people to feel as though, even though they can't go there, they can impact it. I 100% believe in that. And obviously being able to go there leaves one hell of an impression.
Yeah.
I truly believe from the places I've been to, Lesotho and Anna and now here, and I think that I leave these places a different person. And I think most other people will too.
Yeah, it's creating that emotional connection.
Yeah,
and,
exactly.
You know, we talk about that a lot, or it's talked about a lot in the nonprofit space, which is, you know, if you can get people to emotionally connect, they're invested in the project.
Yep.
And, you know, I think the point here is that hopefully there are ways for people to connect without ever coming here, because that, you know, increases the
not everybody's going to be able to come here.
Right? Right, and to be honest, we don't want everyone.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was saying. That's kind of what I was alluding to. Is we don't want the world coming here.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I think that that's why we're here currently. I would love you to finish on if you could once this project here is self-sustaining and takes on a life of its own, and you get to kind of withdraw and allow it to be a separate entity unto of itself. What would Indifly do next?
Yeah, what
and
really
why?
excites me about this project is that it can be a model for every reservation system in the United States, right? There are a lot of reservations within the system of the United States that have resources, not all of them are fishing, but when you talk about outdoor recreation, it's not just fishing,
right.
It may be climbing, it may be cycling, it may be, name the gamut.
Yep.
And if Wind River can be an example for other reservations, even better. And I really think that's our next move. Nothing against the global picture because that's important. And, there are a multitude of projects. Part of Indifly's problem right now is we have a very long list of places where this model can work.
Right.
And we have a very small
Scaling
coffer of things to make that happen, which is time and money,
Yep.
Or people and money. And so, it's one of those things where that's a challenge of scaling an organization, which we'll get through. But here in the United States, I really think that Wind River can serve as an example to other reservations within the system. And, it could have a massive impact.
Being from Seattle, being from the Pacific Northwest, and all the the plights that we currently have in front of us out there, I want to leave it at that. I look forward to that conversation and seeing where this goes with regards to my part of the country. Matt, this is going to come off really awkward. So,
Are you going to tell you love me?
Oh God, shit. Yeah, I do actually, man. I just think that what you're doing is so magnanimous. It's unbelievable that nobody else has come to this place where you're standing right now. And I want to say that with sensitivity to how you feel about it being about you versus Indifly. What Indifly is doing is incredibly special, and I'm super proud of that. I'm here to help you further that as much as I possibly can.
Yeah,
so
well,
thank you for all that.
That means a lot. And again, it's all about the communities that we serve, right?
No.
So, as our organization has a bigger impact, it's a bigger community impact. So
yeah.
I appreciate that. That means
I just want to be somebody who
I will
helps.
always deflect the.
Yeah, no, I know what you're trying to do.
But
And I'll put it back in your lap.
yeah. No, thanks. That means a lot. And look, thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you for giving us the opportunity, because I know how reticent you typically are to do these. I think you're fantastic at them.
Well, I don't know about that, but.
No, it is, man. There's only one way this message really gets out. And we talked about this earlier today, not to completely blow up finishing this off, but the person whose blood, sweat, tears, heart, and soul are in this business is going to be the greatest spokesperson for it. And that has to come out occasionally,
No, appreciate that. Big team effort, though.
Yeah, of course. Obviously.
Yeah.